After reviewing the Lenovo Legion Pro 5, I found that it's got quite a lot of power for its size. But so does the Zephyrus G16 from Asus, and with an even thinner and lighter design. So how do they compare? Should you get a thin and light gaming laptop, or just a regular gaming laptop? Well, let's find out. And please like and subscribe if you like these type of videos. From the outside, these two are quite the contrast, and not just in terms of color. They do both go for a stealthy-ish design. None of them scream gamer from afar. But the Zephyrus is a lot more premium and MacBook-ish in a couple of ways. This might be nitpicking, but the Legion is a real fingerprint magnet, and the Zephyrus is real easy to keep clean, especially in this color. But more importantly, while the Legion Pro does have a metal lid, the inside is almost all plastic. Meanwhile, the Zephyrus has a full aluminum body, and you can really feel that strength when you touch it. The Legion is still built quite well for what it's made of, but it can't really compete with all metal. Now, despite that full metal body, the Zephyrus is considerably more lightweight than the Legion, and you will feel that in your backpack. The biggest contrast between these two is simply their portability. The Zephyrus is thinner, lighter, and a lot more comfortable to be carrying around all day. But that extra thickness and weight on the Legion isn't for nothing. To start, it has one of the fastest laptop CPUs in the world. The Ultra 9 285H is basically just a kneecapped version of what the Legion Pro has. The Legion's thicker size means it has more space for cooling, which means more heat output, thus allowing for more power. And that higher power is seen in almost every part, and probably will make a significant difference in performance. But the Zephyrus has even higher spec options. They will still be more power limited than the Legion, but at least it has the options for higher specs. The port selection on these two is technically a little better on the Legion, but it really depends on what you use your laptop for. The Legion has an extra USB-A port, but more importantly, a full-size Ethernet port. But the Zephyrus has an SD card reader, so it might be better if you're, for example, a videographer or content creator. And the thin and light theme on the Zephyrus continues with its power brick, because it's a lot smaller and lighter than the gigantic one that the Legion has. It is more justified once you see how much power it delivers, but it definitely could be smaller. I mean, Asus has even higher wattage power bricks that are a lot more compact. They both support USB-C charging though, so you could always just use a smaller charger for if you're on the go. Their keyboards are also quite different. The Zephyrus has an RGB backlight, but with only one lighting zone, while the Legion actually has 24 lighting zones, one for each vertical row of keys. This does give it some cooler lighting options, but it's still nowhere near as cool as per key RGB backlights. As for the keys themselves, the Zephyrus's keys feel and sound a bit more full, while the Legion is definitely clickier. I personally prefer the feeling on the Zephyrus since it has a soft-ish plastic feeling on the keys, but the ones on the Legion do feel satisfying. Everyone has their own taste in this kind of stuff, but both of these are excellent keyboards. The Legion also has full-size arrow keys and even a numpad on the side, while the Zephyrus has half-size arrow keys and no numpad. But it does have 4 reprogrammable macro keys, which is pretty cool. Their trackpads are also quite different. The one on the Zephyrus, again, feels more premium since it's made of glass compared to the plastic on the Legion. The Zephyrus has a deeper, more premium feeling click, while the Legion is a lot clickier, but definitely feels a little cheap. Their size difference is also nothing to scoff at. I mean, these two look like they're from 2 completely different generations. Now, their displays is where it gets really interesting. On paper, they're pretty much identical, but trust me, there are differences. And the most noticeable one is definitely the difference in coating. The Zephyrus is glossy, but it has a very nice anti-reflective coating which prevents reflections quite well, while on the Legion, you're basically looking at a mirror. This is really distracting, especially if you're near a window or any type of light source. And in my opinion, it does greatly affect the usability of this device. And while this might be nitpicking, the Zephyrus's glass display just looks a lot more premium than the plastic bezel with that webcam bump on the Lenovo. Minus those two things, they're both almost identically gorgeous OLED displays. Having basically perfect colors, infinite contrast, and beautiful blacks, these are the best of the best. Pair that with an incredibly high refresh rate of 240 Hz, and these are pretty much perfect for any games. They also get just as bright at 500 nits, which is more than enough. But again, the reflectivity on the Legion will affect its usability. The Legion's hinge does open up further though, which is very nice. And it definitely has less display wobble, so that is a plus point. But where it falls apart are its speakers. The Zephyrus simply sounds a lot better. It's got more bass, it gets louder, it sounds clearer, and it even has some great surround sound. The Legion only has speakers on the bottom, so they sound a bit lacking once you pick it off a table, but the Zephyrus has subwoofers on the bottom and top-firing speakers, and you really can hear that difference. After almost 2 years, it still has pretty much the best speakers out of any laptop I've tested. And that difference is noticeable in games as well. Look, the Legion speakers aren't bad, they're just a bit lacking in bass and volume. Now, while the Zephyrus definitely has a better sounding microphone, the Legion actually has a really good looking, high quality webcam, which some people will appreciate a lot. The user experience of a laptop is also defined by its software, by quite a bit. The Zephyrus has Armoury Crate pre-installed, but I'm using an open source alternative called G-Helper. And the Legion has LegionSpace pre-installed. G-Helper is pretty much the same as Armoury Crate, but just a lot simpler. LegionSpace does have some nice performance customizability, especially in that custom power profile. But it loses all of these options once you unplug it, which is the case for most gaming laptops. But on the Zephyrus, you get fully custom fan curves, GPU overclocking, custom power limits for the CPU and GPU, and all of these options are available even if you unplug the charger. So in my opinion, it's a lot more versatile than the Legion. But now for the most important part. Which one of these two is faster? Well, in Cinebench, that higher power limit for the Legion is visible right away, and it scores damn near double as high as the Zephyrus. In 3D Mark TimeSpy though, that wattage difference between their GPUs isn't as huge as I expected it to be. They're pretty close in terms of performance. But the real results will be seen when we play some actual games on these. So let's see how they compare.
You'll never take me down.
What did you do, man? No!
Yeah, the difference in power is definitely apparent. While this difference wasn't seen in the benchmarks, they're pretty damn big in a mixed workload like gaming. Let me explain. Laptops have a power envelope. This is determined by how much their power brick gives them, but more importantly, how much heat they can output. The Zephyrus has lower power limits because it can get rid of less heat. This is simple thermodynamics. But the Legion has a beefier, bigger cooling solution, which means it can use more power and get rid of more heat. But once both of the CPU and GPU need to work hard, this higher power envelope becomes crucial. Because while the Legion's CPU and GPU can freely use however much power they want because they have plenty of headroom, the Zephyrus's CPU and GPU have to constantly fight and swap watts because the laptop doesn't have very much to give away. So while their GPUs might perform close in benchmarks, when a big part of the Zephyrus's GPU's power gets stolen during gaming by its CPU, it performs quite a bit worse. Sorry for the elaborate explanation, I just think this stuff is really interesting. In short though, Legion faster because thicker, Zephyrus slower because thinner. Now both of these have Intel chips, which for this generation unfortunately means horrible battery life. I tested their battery life in two different scenarios, under light use and during gaming. In the light use test, I played a YouTube video until their batteries died, with their displays at full brightness, at 60 Hz, and with their dedicated GPUs turned off. And the Zephyrus did last a little longer. The chip in the Legion simply is a lot more power hungry. But both of these times are not very good, especially if you compare it to the AMD competition, even inside the same Zephyrus lineup. Now, in the gaming test, I played Battlefield 1 until their batteries died, with the same settings as before. And while the Zephyrus technically did last a little longer, they're both not made to be gaming on battery, so don't buy them expecting that. But that Ultra 9 275HX is a really beefy chip, and normally it's in laptops that are a lot thicker. So how do these two compare in terms of thermals and fan noise? Well, they're actually really close. In the heaviest of games, their CPUs both reached around the same maximum temperature of 90 degrees Celsius. The Zephyrus's GPU did stay a little bit cooler, but not by a whole lot. These temperatures are a bit on the warm side, but none of them are close to thermal throttling. Hell, shoving such a powerful chip into such a relatively thin body is actually really impressive on the Legion side. But you can't beat the laws of physics, folks. And where there is heat, there will be noise. Yeah, the Legion is definitely a lot louder. But that thickness also brings a lot of upgradeability with it. They both do have an upgradable Wi-Fi card, and both also have two M.2 SSD slots, so you don't have to replace your Windows drive to get more storage. But the Legion has fully upgradable RAM, while the Zephyrus has it all soldered, which really sucks. Now, arguably one of the most important parts here is how much they cost. And this is where the Zephyrus loses a bit. This spec is frequently around $300 to $700 more expensive. That's quite a chunk of change. They both do have lower spec models, which are cheaper, but even here, the Legion does stay cheaper. Like I said before though, the Zephyrus does have higher spec models, with an RTX 5080 or even a 5090. These models are ridiculously expensive though, and still very power limited. So, I don't know. Which brings us to the big question. Which one of these should you buy? The Zephyrus G16 or the Legion Pro 5? Well, like always, it really depends on what you want. The Legion Pro 5 is thicker, heavier, and overall just a flimsier package, but it is considerably faster. But the Zephyrus is a lot more portable, thinner, lighter, and just built better. Not to mention, it arguably has a better display. So here's my advice. If you sit at a desk often and don't move around with your laptop that much, get the Legion, because you won't notice its thickness or weight, and it's just simply the faster option. But if you move around a lot with your laptop, or just want a more premium laptop experience, get the Zephyrus, because it is a great all-around laptop, even for non-gaming activities. And that's pretty much it. Unless, what if Asus made a thicker Zephyrus G16 in the format of the Legion Pro 5? Oh wait, they did. It's called the SIKRIT G16. But that has the fastest laptop chip in the world. the Ryzen 9 9955HX3D. So how do those two compare? Is Lenovo's best better than Asus's best? Well, let's find out in the next video, where I'll be comparing those two in full detail. Now let me give a huge shout out to my YouTube members. Soundwife, Thomas, Inky, Mr. Frosty Dude, Dropzone1, Martijn Snijkers, Flimsy, Aki, Disco Volante, Daniel, Mr. Nuke, Sebastian, Christian Sands, Real Elf, Suryansh, Alan, Toasted, Eric the Rad, Wesley Rhodes, Michael, and Ghost Data. If you become a YouTube member, you get early access to content of mine, a shout out at the end of every video, and you'll also be supporting me as a creator to make these videos. And of course, you'll also be part of the Cool Guys Club. So you can use cool emojis like these in the comment section. So join the club if you're interested. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.